Katy, how are you doing?
Good, thanks.
So wonderful to see you.
I've got my you see that?
Ah,
You see it? It's like the strawberry syrup bubbling away.
ah. So I just
Yeah.
put them straight in the oyster. How's that? We've got a, you know.
Well, Katy, that tequila one, I tried it. Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
It's gorgeous, isn't it?
Very nice.
It's like super refreshing.
Well, I had lemon, not lime, but oh yeah.
Almost as good. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to turn the volume up so I can hear you both better. So
Just turn my volume down.
there we go, that's a bit better.
So introduce yourself for a minute, Kate. Tell us a little bit about what you do, because this is the Oyster, this is the Afterburn episode.
Yeah. The Oyster Lady, also known as Katy. I've been championing oysters now for, gosh, coming on to 20 years, which lets you know a little bit about how long I've been around on this planet. And I love them because they're incredibly versatile, as you're finding out today, and as our lovely viewers are finding out. You can eat them raw, you can eat them cooked, you can eat them savory, you can eat them sweet, you can do oyster mixology, as we've discovered with the tequila. And they're incredibly good for you as well. They're, you know, jam-packed full of all the amino acids, vitamins, and the good stuff that makes you happy as well. That's dopamine.
I think they work.
And I think they're really they're a social food stuff as well, you know, that thing where you teach someone else how to shark if you're in a group and then everyone gathers round. I was saying to the guys on the beach today, it's a bit like when you try out all these different recipes, it's a bit like the old 70s, 80s fondue party, but with oysters instead.
But that's food in general, isn't it, Katy? That's what we love about food. It just brings that's you know, and the fact that you could do an oyster class on the beach, what better location to do it? Beautiful weather today.
Right on the oyster farm, where your oysters came from, Porthilly oysters. Thanks, guys. We love you.
Look at that. That's huge.
Yeah, beautiful. And can you imagine what it's like for people who come down for those classes? Those are a specific class that I do, like an experience, and we do it right on the beach in view of the estuary where the oysters are grown.
Oh, well, as soon as we're allowed, book Hilary and I in and we'll come down.
Well, yeah, we do a barbecue on the beach, so you have to come.
Exactly. It's meant to be.
So yeah, there's what's that, Hilary?
Well, yeah, so I want to do a quick get a couple on.
A quick demo?
A quick shucking, yeah. Can you show us how to shuck?
Shucking demo? Absolutely.
Yeah,
on the grill.
I've got my knife.
So hang on, Hilary, are you doing the demo? Is he doing it?
I want you to lead. You know, I might get it wrong.
Are we going to all do it together?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, let's go. Are you ready?
Okay.
Guns at dawn. I mean, knives at dawn. Okay, so we've all got the gear. I've got helicopters going over an aeroplane, so it's quite noisy here. Might hear some seagulls as well. So we explained this before about the cup. You want to keep that level, and we always have a cloth, not because of the knife, but actually because this part of the shell can actually be quite sharp. So we're protecting our hand just by holding that. You don't always have to. It's just kind of handy if you're doing a lot of them. And you go in at the hinge, which is this pointed bit here. I do a little thing. I've got all these little names for the little techniques. Right angle, the blade goes in like that, and I just clip the end off, and I call that cigar snap. You don't have to do that. Don't worry, Jack, you're going to have a proper lesson when you come down. I could see you were like that archetypal student, then like staring into the camera going, I want to see what she's doing.
Yeah, I want to get it wrong.
So yeah, and then once you've got the access to the hinge, which you can see there, you just push your knife in firm. I always say good, firm, steady movements, side to side, little shimmy. You don't need to go in too far. You've got your purchase there, you can see, because the knife is holding onto the oyster, or the oyster's holding onto the knife. And once it's in so far, you just do what I call the motorbike rev, and pop the breadth of the oyster knife, pops it open. And then straight away take that knife out, give it a little wipe because it can get a bit of grit from here. And then what I call the cigar hold, finger on top and underneath like this, like Hannibal in the A-Team with a big fat cigar. Some all dexterous and maneuverable here. And just tuck your blade into the oyster because you want to cut what we call the adductor muscle. You guys were mentioning that earlier. And my finger is on top. I know it's hard to see. I'm going to turn around here, back to front. So what I say is shave the shell. It's not just cutting the muscle, it's shaving the shell. You want to get it as clean and close to the surface of the shell as possible because you want to keep as much of the meat in the oyster. So shave that shell and look at that.
I've messed this right.
Look at that.
What have I done here?
Don't worry, when you come down, you'll get... Nice one, Hillary. Nice one. You want that as pearly white as possible with no remaining meat. Okay. And then you've got the oyster in the cup and you want to cut the adductor muscle, which goes from the top shell to the bottom. So you simply slide under and, again, shave the shell and slice that adductor muscle that's attached to the bottom of the shell. And there you have it, your detached shucked oyster.
Huh.
Are we all there? Are you done? Nice one. I do a thing where I like to flip it just because of presentation, and it takes a bit. If you're going to cook an oyster, when it heats up, it can create some pressure when it's like got suction on it, so you don't want it to pop out of the shell. So I just put the flat of the knife and flip and turn it over, and that means it's properly detached. And that's your oyster shucked. How you doing, Jack?
Yes.
He's gone quiet. Yeah.
Eventually.
Nice one. What have you put on yours, Hillary?
I found a bit of there's a bunch of they make this stuff called, oh, hang on, got my juice. They're called chili number 5.
Nice.
And it's
That looks good.
you get all of these nice different little spices. So I one on there. Which one did I put on there?
Beautiful. Yeah, I mean, you know that thing with the absolute classic oysters with Tabasco and lemon. It's just a perfect combination. There you go.
There you go. Right. You ready, Jack?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's always ready for an oyster now. Here we go, guys. Cheers.
Katy.
Mmm.
Wow.
Mm. Oh. Oh.
And
Yes.
it's funny because people ask me quite often if you're meant to chew them. And I would say a comparison back to what we were talking about earlier about the culture being really similar to wine. You would never knock back a really fine wine and that would be like trying not to taste it, wouldn't it? So with an oyster, take your time, sip the liquor, tip it in and give it a chew and really sort of savor it.
That's a really good analogy, actually. Yeah, because you're right. You wouldn't like with anything like a nice cigar or wine.
Yeah. Take your time and savor.
Oh, that's mad.
I think this first one is a dud. Look, I've messed this right up.
Oh. It happens, even to the best of us. So did you guys cook, you did the Kilpatrick?
We did a couple of different recipes. Yeah, I did the Kilpatrick, and then as well as I made made a sort of Thai herby butter.
Mm-hmm.
The chili.
Nice.
Garlic.
Well, that's one of the wonderful things with a butter base. You can just keep adding anything you want to a butter base with barbecued oysters. I've just put literally just like a chamula spice, garlic and rosemary. Just go raid your cupboards and just experiment,
Compound butters
I think,
are so versatile, aren't they, Kay? Like, you say you can add anything to it to make it taste amazing.
Yeah, it's just a really good carrier as well because you wouldn't want to put a dry spice on an oyster because that's like the dry spice and the oyster meat and the liquor. It wouldn't really, you want that kind of emulsification of the butter with it.
Okay, and then I tried the strawberry recipe as well with the white wine.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Was it nice?
Yeah. It's like a dessert oyster, you know?
Exactly. I was going to ask you, actually. I can't, you know what? I can't remember. Did we do the chocolate oyster last time?
Yes,
Yes.
I think we did, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, maybe
That's always a winner.
we might be able to raid the fridge here and see if there's any chocolate. Maybe whip up another one. With chocolate and vodka, was it?
Yeah,
I've
because we had the vodka made from cow's milk, didn't we, last time?
We did, yeah. So that was lovely. Because that's the other thing with the... Oh, no, he's got some. He's got his entire larder out in the garden.
Somebody just asked, is there a specific shucking knife we use?
Say that again?
Someone's just asked, is there a specific knife you use for shucking oysters?
Yes. Yes. Shucking knives. Good. Somebody asked earlier because they said they felt really heavy, the lady at the class, and I said it's because you need to have metal. The blade runs all the way through, because you need it to be a strong blade running all the way through, because you're going to be doing a lot of this, and you know some of the oysters can get really big and tough, and you're literally having a fight with them to get them open. Because the adductor muscle on the ones we're working with today are quite small, but when you get a bigger oyster, you know, like a scallop, the main meat of a scallop is the adductor muscle. And those things are really strong, and you can really you can feel it pulling back and closing when you're trying to shuck it sometimes.
So this is one of yours.
Try going slice. Oh, you're doing the cigar snap there, Hillary.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. You hadn't, you know, you've just mentioned that to me now, and what I realised is before, when I've been shucking oysters, you could just go straight for it. You get little flaky bits there that sometimes fall into the oyster.
Yeah.
That bit.
Yeah, it just helps because it gets rid of the excess shell, but it also gives you more direct vision into the hinge, and you can whip that off, and just makes it like more easy access, really.
So here you go, just the tip. Give it a wiggle.
Yeah. You need to lift it up a little bit, Hillary, so we can see. There we go.
Might move over, so I'm not so high in the air. I might stab my face or something.
So, Katy, when you shuck the actual bottom of the oyster, is there a specific way? Are you literally just using the knife to clean the bottom of the shell and remove that abductor?
It's not exactly cleaning. It's when I say shave the shell, it's because you want to get the closest shave, in terms of, rather than thinking of cutting the muscle, think of shaving that shell. And that means that you get a really clean slice, and the adductor muscle stays attached to the oyster rather than the shell, because you want that. You want the oyster as complete as possible.
Because it's quite sharp.
You don't want to leave.
Knife is blunt, and then the other side is fairly sharp, isn't it? So is that?
Yeah, you've got a blunt side and a sharp side. So you just have to make sure make sure that you've got that way facing, and you sort of like here, the sharp edge here, slide away from you and slice it.
Right. Go on, heels, no pressure.
Or
So
shave the shell.
shave the shell. This is my syrupy. Look at that. Look, guys, look.
Oh.
Look at that. Oh, syrupy. Because the reason I use strawberries, like people are like, what, strawberries on oysters? And it's the same with, you can use blueberries as well. Anything that's quite acidic, like obviously lemons and limes, it works. So strawberries are quite acidic. If you eat a strawberry on its own, it's quite sharp, isn't it?
Yeah.
So anything that's got that sharp acidity works really well with oysters, obviously, because we know, limes and lemons have been working well for years with them.
As you say, they're so versatile.
Mm. Oh, that's so good. Mm.
Oh. I don't think I can wait to barbecue this one. I think this is going to go down the hatch, I'm afraid.
Come on, you are barbecue lads, Hillary.
Yeah, exactly.
It's understandable, though. I know what it's like. If you've got a lot of them, that's a good excuse to play around on the barbecue cooking, the oyster mixology. And I think simplicity is best, like you were saying earlier, Jack. You don't want to drown the oyster in tons of different dressings and too much of...
Yeah, be too heavy with the flavourings and the seasonings.
Yeah, keep it as simple as possible. I think that's why I love the Margar oyster, because, that's simple. It's literally just a squeeze of lime and a dash of tequila, and it's, it elevates the oyster rather than swamping it in flavour.
Katy,
Okay,
is
now
there like an optimum time? So obviously we've shucked these now, haven't we? And obviously we've had them sitting in ice. Is there like an optimum time that you should be eating them, or can they sit quite happily in their liquor for a while?
They can for a while, but you would need to refrigerate them normally.
Okay.
But I mean, sort of, they usually don't last enough to worry about. They don't use, do you know what I mean? Because they get eaten.
Yeah.
If you're shucking them now, as long as they don't sort of dry out and get really warm, then that's fine.
Okay.
And obviously we're doing a barbecue show, so they're going to go on the barbecue, so they'll cook through anyway.
Yeah.
But in terms of fresh oysters, if you put them, I mean, in the States, they're a lot more popular in the population more generally, which is something I've been trying to change here, and I think we're slowly getting there, getting more people eating them. But you can go into like a market and there'll be like a tray full of unshucked oysters, in their shells, all sitting there like this. And then there'll be a plastic tray full of shucked oysters, and you'll buy them by the quart, and they'll literally scoop them out into a plastic bag, and you take them home like that.
What, without the shell?
Yes,
Okay.
shucked, ready shucked.
Oh.
And because lots of the recipes, like the traditional oyster stews and stuff, that's what they'll use those for. Oyster pie, steak and oyster pie, all of those things just make it easy for them to have them ready shucked.
Okay.
I think Margot Oyster is going to happen again here.
Oh, I'm going to get some more. You two are cracking on. Let me get another one.
is there any particular type of oysters or size of oysters that you should barbecue compared to eating them raw, or what is it?
Not really. I would say it's more about, I think you mentioned it earlier actually, more about the size, because you want them to be quite big, reasonably big and meaty, so that they hold their structure really. And if there's enough liquor, because they shrink up when they're cooking. I mean, if you look at this, I don't know if you can see that one has shrunken and the liquor's gone. So you want a large oyster with as much liquor in it as possible when you barbecue, because it keeps it moist. There's that word that everyone cringes at. And firm, it doesn't disappear. Because you know what it's like if someone overcooks a mussel and you've got that little nugget inside. It's not very palatable. But we're encouraging. I mean, there is talk of post-Brexit glut of oysters, which it's not as big a problem as first imagined. People can still export if they're depurated oysters, but that's no reason why you shouldn't try and eat more oysters in the UK. Because as you mentioned, Hilary, we're an island state. We've got coast everywhere, and there's farmers all over the place. England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales. We've got fantastic farms, and the wild oysters that you can get down on the south coast of Cornwall, the native oysters, and those are available from sort of September to April time. And it's just really, I did an event at London Oyster Week called Oyster Atlas, because it was trying to show people how oysters were so different from different areas, and actually daylighting how many different farmers we have in the UK all around. Like, we've got them, literally from the Outer Hebrides to down here in Falmouth, one end of the country to the other, and all the way through. And there's new farms opening up. There's Atlantic Edge Oysters is a brand new oyster farm in Wales, and they're launching their product to market this summer. And oysters take 2 to 3 years to get to marketable size. So you don't just open an oyster farm and start selling. You have to grow them first, and it takes 2 to 3 years. And that's, considering all of that effort, I think that's why I sort of have such reverence for them, taking 2 to 3 years to get to marketable size. That's another reason not to just knock them back.
Yeah, that's the thing. You don't want to waste them, do you? Like, the process to grow them, as you say, 2 3 years. That's you don't want to just chuck a bit, put some barbecue sauce on them and away you go. You want to savor it and experiment.
Savor it, yeah. And that's back to talking about the guys at Porthilly. When I'm doing my classes, I see them coming and going. They're up at like 5 in the morning. I'm not there at 5 in the morning, but the daily work that goes on with the tractors and the barges and the sorting and the grading, and and that goes on day in, day out for those 2 to 3 years that the oysters are growing.
Okay, yeah, because I mean, where I grew up, I grew up inland in Australia, right? And in theory,
Yeah.
island surrounded by oysters as well. It's just a little bit bigger, Jack. It's a bit harder to get to them where I come from.
Right.
But when we'd go away on holiday to the coast all of the time, and my dad, and I think he's online here, he might be watching, but we used to pluck them off the rocks.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just shuck them off the rocks, and you know.
When you say pluck them off the rocks, did you have to like get at them with a hammer and chisel, or
Yeah,
just...
there was a bit of knife involved in memory, you know, and
Yeah.
you know, going out into the water with boots on because the rocks were quite sharp from memory.
Sharp? Yeah.
Yeah, they were sort of natural.
Well, I have a little bit of an exclusive bit of news that has excited me greatly today. Well, it was a couple of days ago, but I'm still excited about it because I haven't been to a store yet myself. What's that?
You heard it here first.
Yeah. Well, everyone, obviously people know me as the Oyster Lady locally as well, and people are often sending me things like, where can I get oysters? Is this a nice place? Blah, blah, blah. Look at this. Blah, you know, everything to do with oysters. If they see it, they think of me. And a friend of mine, Jasmine, she sent me she tagged me in a story, and it was a picture of a shellfish on a rock, and it said, "Is this an oyster?" And I said, "Yes." And she replied, "Is that normal?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I don't know what you mean." I said, "Where is it?" Thinking it was down on the south coast because that's where the wild oysters are. It's a rock oyster. And she said it's at little, I don't know if I want to say where it is because I'm going to go hunting. It's at a beach in UKBBQ, my hometown. And that's the first time they've been spotted.
Oh, amazing.
I know. I felt like Pied Piper. I felt like they were coming to me. But there is a slight...
Every morning.
What's that?
Keep that quiet and you can go every morning and just like get 12.
Yeah, personal supply.
Yeah.
There is a slight bit of contention around that because these are not indigenous, but I feel like there's so much positive about oysters growing because they're filter feeders. They encourage about 200 other species to grow around them in the environment that they create as oyster reefs, and they do extract nitrogen and CO2 from the atmosphere. So we call them eco-engineers. They're amazing.
Okay.
That's what my next question was going to be. Are they an invasive species, and are they good for the actual ecosystem? So yeah, thanks for...
Yeah, they are. And you know what? In the current climate of you can't eat this. This is bad for the planet, etc., etc. And this whole sort of understandable reaction to seaspiracy. Not all seafood is a problem. This stuff, we call it positive impact farming. Oysters are like they're like tick, tick, tick. They cover all bases brilliantly. They're good for you. They're good for the planet. They make you happy. They taste great.
So the oysters we're eating now, where are they in particular from, and what type of oysters are they? Are we eating?
So these are
famous ones?
Let me get geeky. I'll get geeky. They are rock oysters. That doesn't come from where they're grown, even though they're grown in rock. That just happens to be a coincidence. The species is Crassostrea gigas, and they are originally from Japanese waters, but they've been naturalized. What you got there, Hillary?
I've got a little bit of a cheeky Kilpatrick one here with a bit of bacon and a bit of...
That looks good.
I'm going in for another one.
So yeah, Crassostrea gigas, rock oyster, Pacific oyster, originally from Japanese waters, but naturalized here for decades now. And these ones in particular are from Porthilly oysters. And these guys have been farming there for, I think, 30 years. Tim will have to correct me on that one. But I've known them for a long time. And before they even had their own depuration centres, all of that equipment has developed over the years. So that's how I met them. I used to work on an oyster farm down on the south coast, and Tim used to drive down with his oysters to get them depurated. And that's how we met. And
what does depurated mean?
Depuration, essentially, to legally sell oysters, you need to depurate them, which is running treated water through them. And that doesn't sound as bad as it is. It's basically the seawater put through ultraviolet light, which will kill any bacteria. Okay. And then the oyster feeds on that for 48 hours and cleans itself out. And the importance of using the seawater from whence they came is that it maintains what we call the terroir, the flavour.
So ever. My first was 15 minutes ago, and I'm 54. So.
Oh my goodness!
This is number 2. And
I feel so.
I blame you.
I'll take that. I'll happily take that. So yeah, Porthilly oysters. These guys won. What's that?
Like
sorry.
By the seaside. This is amazing. Absolutely amazing.
It's so salty and gorgeous, isn't it? It's like
clear instructions. They're so brilliant. Honestly, even I understand.
Thank you.
Hang on.
Well, we're all just eating now. Yeah, the guy from Porthilly. There's a competition where there's a blind taste test of all the oysters in the country. What a fun competition that'll be for anyone sitting there eating oysters. But Porthilly have won in the blind taste test many times. They've been champion like year after year. So there's something in the water, that's for sure.
Well, wow. These are damn good. I don't know about you, Hills, but this year's favourite episode so far? What are you saying?
I'm just going to load up another. Look at that. Another Kilpatrick.
All right.
So, guys, do you like the dessert oysters?
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. It's nice. I think you've got to keep them till the end, like you would at dessert, because there's sweeter flavour in there. But yeah, it's another type of oyster, and it's just delicious. Yeah.
It is quite funny actually. When you say about leaving it to the end, when I do my classes, I actually always make sure that there's another type of oyster to taste after the chocolate one, because as I said today, it's either a moment of trepidation or horror for the guests involved, because they're like, oysters with chocolate, you know. And so you want to make sure that there's something. What's that, Jack?
Because you're right, you don't want to leave on that bad. If you're not sure, you don't want to leave on that bad.
I have to say though, so far, I'm not lying, 100% have loved them. And I still get nervous because I'm putting dark chocolate, sugar, and butter on an oyster, and then I'm like, it's called aphrodisia because it contains 2 very strong aphrodisiacs, dark chocolate and oysters. And the guests are like, and what's lovely about it when you're baking them on the barbecue is that they actually smell like chocolate brownies in the oven. They've got that, you know, that baking smell. Absolutely amazing.
As soon as they started to sizzle, that liquor, it's that like archetypal seafood smell. You know, you're on holiday, people are grilling fish. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Actually, you've just reminded me again. I keep talking about these guys this morning, but it's because it was my first class of the year. I asked them when we'd had quite a few oysters, I said, have you got a clear favourite? And they sort of ummed and ahed, and they said, I think I actually really like the one that we had on the barbecue first, which was just because I always do a raw naked, we say, and then a cooked naked, so they can compare raw oysters to cooked oysters without any addition. And they really like just that, the way that the liquor transforms into almost like a seafood broth is amazing.
Okay. Wow.
I'm going to get some more on the barbecue now. I've had a few more. Get some back on the grill.
I feel like I'm behind in the eating because I'm talking to you so much.
Well, that's when you know the food's good, when no one actually speaks, then everyone just eats and just looks at each other.
Yeah.
Well, we should probably head on, Jack. We've got Luciana waiting, and she's going to have a bit of a chat to us as well. But
indeed, yeah.
Katy, mate, that is absolutely wonderful. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I absolutely love hanging out with you guys, even though it's virtually.
Well,
we shall do it in person.
Exactly.
Come down to Cornwall in the summer.
Yeah.
All of you. Those in the background.
And again, if you're ever in London, Katy, let us know. And obviously, it'd be great to meet you in person.
Yeah, we haven't met. I feel like we have, but we haven't.
We've met. That's what the cool kids say nowadays.
Yeah, and Hilary and I have managed a quick, brief meeting in Mayfair, didn't we?
Yes, yeah. Sort of.
That was over a year ago.
Yeah. It was some time. Yeah, but definitely, I think we should organise something a little bit more. And you know, a nice little event up in London now we can get together, you know.
Whoa. Sounds good.
Sounds good.
How's that? But yeah, thank you again, Katy. We're running a bit behind here, so we better dash off. But thank you so much, and thank you so much for all of the information. Everybody out there, get onto Katy the Oyster Lady official now, the Oyster Academy, and you know, follow and check out what you do. You do amazing.
Yeah, the oyster love.
Yeah, exactly.
We're so, you know, we've now got our second favourite episode. How's that, Jack?
Love it. Maybe we can try and just keep bumping it up to first favourite.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's been wonderful, guys. Thank you. I really appreciate you bringing me on, and it's been lovely to bring Porthilly up to you guys as well.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll when we share the pictures from the episode, we'll make sure we tag Porthilly and yourself, and if people want to get involved with your classes, which I think is amazing. Like, you know, the fact you could do this online and learn about it virtually. Yeah, it's the way of the world now.
Yeah.
So why not embrace it?
Well, the first one I did on Zoom was brilliant. I had a development chef from Ottolenghi and 2 Irish guys who were setting up an oyster bar, and it was St. Patrick's Day, so you can imagine how much fun that was.
Yeah.
Lively. Right, guys, thank you so much.
Thanks, Katy.
And see you soon.
Thanks, Katy.
Bye.
Bye-bye.